I will start though, because
Okay.
my first thing is the video game series Animal Crossing. What's up? You knew it was coming.
Gosh.
You knew it was coming. You knew it was going to be here eventually, and I decided that this is the episode for it. Animal Crossing is probably one of my favorite video game series of all time. I've spent a disgusting amount of time playing it, as Rachel can attest. She has witnessed me at least go into one of these sort of binge cycles.
When the new game came out, I literally asked Griffin how long I could expect him to be an escape into this world.
Yeah. And I was sort of evasive, if you'll recall, giving an answer, because it's not a good one. So Animal Crossing, if you've never played it or if you've never heard of it, is a community sim game where you are a human being living in a town populated by anthropomorphic animals. It's a game by Nintendo. The original game actually came out for the Nintendo 64 in Japan. But it only came to other regions, including America, the following year on GameCube, where it was sort of fixed up and made to look a little bit prettier. And it's kind of similar to if you've played like The Sims or any of the Harvest Moon series. It's kind of in a similar vein where there's like a day cycle. The game moves in real time, and every time you turn it on, there's sort of new things going on. But sort of unlike The Sims specifically, there's a much less of a focus on like objectives. It's not like you have to go and make your Animal Crossing character go use the bathroom. The fact that I just said that out loud, I envisioned it, and it's profane.
Oh, I have an idea.
Go.
How about I talk about what I know of the game, and then you kind of elaborate based on that?
I know there's the noise you hate very much because you think it's the cat every time.
Yes. So this is a game where you are a little creature and you have
just a human being.
You have a bunch of friends to interact with in this town, and you can customize your little house and your clothes.
Yep.
And you can go fishing.
Yep.
And planting things.
Gardening. Sometimes they call it gardening.
There's little shops you can go in and out of.
Yes.
You have little convos with the townsfolk.
Yeah, and like help them out with their stuff.
Griffin, last time this game came out and he was playing it incessantly, I got legitimately jealous of an alligator who seemed to be flirting with him in the game. Every time I looked over, there was this female alligator that seemed to be real thirsty for Griffin. And he'd been playing it so long that I used her as a symbol of all that was upsetting to me.
Right. And this was a long time ago. And I should stress that sort of my priorities are different these days. But yeah, I mean, she needed an apple, and so I'd help give her an apple, and maybe the relationship turned into something else, something more meaningful after that.
But that's basically the whole game, right? Like, I just summarized
the
the whole
game is essentially you helping out your neighbors and growing closer to them. There are these like sort of progression customization hooks, like you mentioned. There's a bunch of different clothes and accessories you can buy for your character.
Didn't you make a whole like Mario themed room or something?
Yeah, so that because it's a Nintendo game, like a big element of the game is designing your house. It's like an interior decoration sim. So much so that they actually made a spin-off game called Happy Home Designer that is just the interior decoration part, where you go into somebody's house and they're like, I want a house with like a cool goth vibe. And then it's up to you to like sort of put that together, which was fun, but not the core sort of experience that I like so much. And so, yeah, a big part of the game is paying to expand your house, paying off your house loan to this raccoon named Tom Nook, and expanding your house and decorating it. And then you receive sort of a score based on how well you've decorated it. There was, I don't know if this was in all the games, but in Animal Crossing, there was an emphasis on feng shui. If you are following those principles, then there are like certain rewards that you can gain. You catch fish and you catch bugs. There's a museum that you can donate stuff to. So there's sort of a completionist element to it where you're trying to fill out the museum.
Question?
Please do. That's why we do this.
I've seen you put a lot of time into this like personalization and home design aspect of a variety of games.
Right.
I don't actually see you doing that much in your real life. And I'm curious. I'm curious why that appeals to you in the game, but when it comes to, let's say, making a space or yourself look a certain way, that's less interesting.
It's easier in the game.
It's easier.
I don't know why I personally, I don't give as much of a shit about, I like to look nice. I like nice clothes.
I know, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that part of a big appeal to you in a video game is if you can customize a character or a space.
Sure.
But
That's just, and this is like the conversation about Animal Crossing or any type of game like this. I played a lot of Stardew Valley, which is a pretty recent game that came out, I believe, last year. It just came out on Switch again this year, and so I started playing it again. But it is sort of a farming game in the style of Harvest Moon, but with an emphasis on you can decorate your house and customize this big farm that you've got. I think that I think Animal Crossing is sort of divisive as a game, because if you want to boil it down the way that Rachel just explained it, like, it just does sound like a bunch of chores, and sometimes you'll buy new pants. But if you start thinking about the game that way, then you should apply that same sort of metric when talking about any video game. And when you do that, it all sort of starts to seem pretty meaningless, right? Like all video games, whether you're like shooting Nazis or buying furniture for your house, is all about putting your real ass time and then performing in-game things to achieve virtual goals that have no
well,
literal...
but that's the thing, is the goals, the achievements.
Right.
So, and I think your brother Justin has talked about this a little bit, about kind of the value of a game that gives you some wins,
right?
You know, some very clear objectives, as you said. And so since these games don't have a, like, do these 5 things and then you win.
Well, that's just it, though. Like, that's specifically what I'm talking about, is if you look at video games from a like, if there's no explicit objective that you're accomplishing, whether that objective is like a literal objective, a waypoint on the map that you have to go do a thing, or whether it's a story being told to you, if a game doesn't have that, then it kind of feels like a bit of a waste of time. My argument is that, like, regardless of what you're doing, if you're playing a video game, you are creating objectives that you alone fulfill. Whether that and so while there isn't like I have to go use the bathroom before my bladder meter explodes, there is, like, I want my kitchen to look a little bit nicer, or I want to complete this one furniture set, or I want to work on my relationship with this just beautiful alligator. That is the way that I treat games, and that specific objective of personal ownership and customization of certain things is my favorite objective in video games.
That's so interesting. I wonder, now, has that always been the case, or is that more recent?
I think it's always been the case. And it's especially true in games where multiplayer is a facet where you can sort of show off your work to other people.
Yeah.
This first sort of clicked with me when me and my brothers and all of our friends were playing EverQuest, which was this, like, old school MMORPG, like one of the first online RPGs. And I just loved the idea of I had this character who could get stronger and then and have better stuff and become, like, wealthier and just have this better status that I could go then and show off to my friends. And I kind of like, or at the very least, not status, but like customization. This one's mine because of the things that I did. Let me show you what I've done with my thing. And that is like Animal Crossing to a T. Like, that's all it is. Come to my town. Let me show you my house, because I've done some really cool design stuff with it.
It's so interesting to me that you'll peacock, to use an expression.
There are peacocks, literal peacocks in the game.
I learned in Parks and Rec. You'll do the kind of flashy pop of color in the virtual space.
Sure.
But I never see you go to a party and say, I'm going to wear this really fancy, nice jacket. And everyone's going to say, hey, look at that jacket. He must have picked a lot of apples. But I
would do that if I knew where the right apples were. I know it's sort of a contradiction, but it's like, you know this to be true. Like, you have seen how much time I spend in, like, character customization menus.
It's just interesting to me.
I just like the idea of, I am on this personal journey that is mine and mine alone. And it's going to be different from everybody else's because of the decisions that I make, but I do want to see what they did, and I want them to see what I did to make it my own.
Yeah.
And that's, like, I think Animal Crossing does that really well in this very Zen-like package. Because, again, you don't lose Animal Crossing. There's not a, like, failure state in the game at all. And because it sort of rotates on a day-to-day schedule, and there are, like, weekly events or holidays, like, hey, it's Christmas, go in and there's, like, special Christmas stuff going on. I just love that idea of a game that you can pick up for a few minutes and see how your thing's doing. And the whole time you are sort of crafting this very individual, lightweight narrative around yourself that is different from everybody else's. So that's Animal Crossing. New Leaf is my favorite game in the series. It's the one we talked about most. It's the out on 3DS. If you haven't played it and you have a 3DS, it's like one of my top 3 favorite games of all time. And there's a new one, the one that you referenced earlier, that's on mobile, called Pocket Camp, that's coming out in November. It's pretty good.
So that one's not out yet.
It's not out yet. I got a sneaky version of it. It's not like the full Animal Crossing experience. It kind of reminds me of that Nico Atsume game that you got into, where you collect the cats and they just kind of sit there.
I was never really super into that.
You said that to me. You played that game a fucking lot.
For like a month.
Yeah, but it was a very intense cat sitting month.
I wanted the cat that had the little hat and the feather, and he'd climb to the top of your tower.
And you got him, and you said, I beat the game. Yeah. That was your personal objective, and you accomplished it. See, Nico Atsume is like a great example of this, is that there's no winning Nico Atsume. It's just like what you want. I don't
stick with it.
See, I do. I stick with it. But if I was playing Nico Atsume and we could show each other's cats, I bet you would have stuck with it a lot more.
Maybe.
Maybe. That's Animal Crossing. It's very good and very cute.